Hi there, and welcome to this Rhino tutorial for interior architects and designers. My name is Epatia, and I use Rhino daily, so I'm really happy to walk you through it. I'm not a certified expert, but still I use it daily, so I can do some simple designs or initial ideas. I translate them in 3D, add them in presentations, and then I'm ready for speaking with clients or speaking with a team. So I've created this tutorial. It's going to be in two parts. The first one is getting to know Rhino and then feeling more comfortable with the program and the commands. And then the second part, it's going to be making a first design. So it's going to be a hotel room, spoiler alert. So at the end of already the first part, you're going to already be able to make some simple designs. But then with the second tutorial, we will explore some more useful things, more on point, and then do everything in action, starting from the first line to actually exporting for presentations. For all of this, of course, you're gonna need a Rhino. So you can, if you don't have installed already a Rhino in your computer, just go ahead and get the trial version. If you're a student, I would highly suggest that you actually buy the Rhino license, because then it's much cheaper and then you get the license for life. So this is a good tip, do that. Also, something important is using a Windows computer making this tutorial. If you have a MacBook, some things are changing when it comes to the control, the Alt, the Shift, the Tab. So with these buttons, so I would go ahead and just search this, how this translates into a MacBook. But other than that, the rest of the commands are exactly the same. There's gonna be some material attached together with this, which is gonna have the commands and a small summary of what we talked about. But then if you have more questions, you can of course Google it. There's a wealth of information out there, and a simple Google search is gonna arrive to exactly what you need. Or also check the Rhino's support website, because they have really good also additional tutorials and descriptions for several of the commands. So let's go ahead. You can do the tutorial in your own pace. So if you want to pause or repeat, speed up, of course you can do, or slow down if I'm talking too fast or too slow. So yeah, let's start. So starting with the interface, when you open the program, this is exactly what you're going to be seeing around you, is this interface. It might seem complicated and a little bit intimidating starting with, but we're going to break it into the different parts and the different panels and functions, and it's going to become easier. Also, when we move with the projects and the tutorial, then it's going to also get much easier, because we dive into the different functions, and then you have a lot of room to discover things on your own. Starting from the top, you can see the title bar. So this is where the name of your file is written, pretty simple. Also there, sometimes it includes, most of the times, it includes actually the size of the file. So this information is over here. The second part is this menu bar. So this is all the different functions, all the different commands. They're actually categorized over here. And then the third part is the command history window and the command window. You can drag this to actually change the size. So the lower part, where you actually see here blinking the prompt line, this is where you can type things. Very similarly to AutoCAD, you can start typing, for example, line. Hit enter or the space bar, and then you can already start drawing a line. So you can put the command that you're actually interested in here, and then hit enter, and it works. So all the items above that, this is just the history of what commands have you used in the past. So we just only had one command, which was the lines, but then still you see the history over here. The next part is these toolbars. So there are different toolbars categorized in different ways. This is really helpful. There is the standard and easy functions. There is set view, blah, blah. I think actually the set view tools, and then the visibility tools, we're going to dive into them a little bit more. But then there are many that you can also discover on your own time. The next part is going to be the sidebar, or this main toolbar over here. So this is the basic functions. With these alone, you can do almost everything, let's be honest. So we're going to dive also into that in a second, but keep in mind that the main things that you need are actually here and maybe in these tabs over here. Next part is actually the viewports. So now you can see that the screen is actually divided into 4 parts: the top, perspective, right, and front. So these are the 4 different viewports you can see over here, but also you can see right here at the bottom. So when the name of the viewport is actually illuminated or blue highlighted, then it means that you're actually currently working on this one. You can either change here at the bottom part of your screen, or you can actually click on the different ones. This is actually pretty important because it's easy to shuffle through the different views. From the perspective view or the 3D version, then you can shuffle to the top or the front view. This is going to be really helpful moving on, and it requires a little bit of getting used to the program, but it's going to be really easy. One thing that is important is to say that if you double click on the name of the view, you're actually going to be transported into this specific viewport. If you double click again, then you go out. So let's double click on the right viewport. I'm in. Double click here and you're out. This is going to be really easy because let's say I jump a little bit ahead, but let's say we have a cube over here. Then in this window, you see it, of course, as a 3D element. On the right, you see it from the right side or from the front side, or then the top view. Let's say that I want to work closer to this. I double click, so then I have a bigger area to work on. You can always shift between the different viewports, and this is happening with the Control and Tab. I hit Control and Tab together once, it takes me to the top. Control and Tab and it takes me to the front. Control and Tab and it takes me to the right. Control and Tab again and it brings me back to the perspective. I will double click because I want to see, let's say, all 4 of them together. I rarely do. I usually have one of the elements, one of the screens to be my main screens, but then also keep in mind that you can shift here the ratios. Let's say you want to have the perspective in the main window, but still you want to be looking at the top, you can do it. However, I rather work and shuffle through the specific viewports each time. So let's double click here, perspective, and I see my cube over here. The next part is going to be the panels, and there are different options. I think this is the standard version, and the panels that they are set up as a standard. You can see here we have the properties panel, the layers panel. Same, if you work in AutoCAD, it's exactly the same thing as in layers in AutoCAD. Or if you work in Vectorworks, it's the same as classes. So you can see the layers or not see the layers, lock them, use a material specific for the layer. So typical layer functions right here. Then there is the rendering that is a little bit more advanced. Materials, also we're not going to use so much. Libraries, there is several options over here. If there is one thing that I always like to add, because of course you can add and you can delete from these panels over here, you can use these options. This little wheel over here will take you to the options and show you what else you can actually be seeing, what other panels I can bring up. One that I really like to use or have available is the display panel. Let's bring it on. So the display panel tells me some simple things. At the moment I'm the perspective viewport, okay, I'm looking things in wireframe mode, blah, blah, blah. We're gonna dive into this a little bit deeper in a second. So moving on, we go over here. This is actually the OSnap toolbar. If you have used other 2D or 3D programs, you know, of course, the snapping function. So the snapping function, it means that it's kind of like a magnet that it takes you either to the edge points of some elements or to the middle point or several. It's actually a great tool to use around. So this is just the toolbar where you set which which points of each object you want that you are snapping to. The end one, the near one. So there are different things that you can shuffle through that. The project, it's the project command, project object snaps. It's a super important one that I came to realize like later on, but we're gonna dive into this one because it's a really cool function. Last is the status bar. Over here, you can see, for example, you can see while I move my cursor, you can see down here that it's changing the location. I think right here is, let me delete the cube, okay? So I just selected and delete. Right here, this is the 0.0. So you can see that here, it will go right at 0. Then I'm working with millimeters. I'm working on the default layer. Let's go back here in the panels. Let me go to the layers. There's just one layer. I'm on the default. That's how I know it over here. And then there are some different functions of the grid snap, which means that it's snapping on a certain grid. The ortho, this means that while I draw, I can only draw in vertical perpendicular lines. Then planar, O-snap, smart track, gumball, record history, filter, blah, blah. Very cool function together with the project that I showed you over here is the gumball. I will go really quick, draw another cube over here. Done my cube. I will select it, and this is exactly what the gumball is. So this is a tool that you can move things in the 3 different axes. So this is the X axis, this is the Y axis, and this is the Z. You can always see that over here. You can move the element to these different axes. You can also free move it. If you want to move it between the X and the Y, you can click this one, moved. If you want to click through the other axis, the Y and the X, you can do over here. And then there is another cool element with the gumball, that is the rotate on this side and even the scale. So pretty cool. The gumball is a pretty cool element that I use a lot. So this is the interface. Starting off, I hope that you are a little bit more comfortable with it. So let's double click here. Let's fix that. And let's move in the simple functions of Rhino. So I'm moving outside again. I'm back into looking at my 4 viewports. Of course, I have selected here the perspective. Let me dive in by double clicking. And let's see how we move around this viewport. So for reference, I will make a simple rectangle. You can find it over here in this main sidebar. So rectangle, let's do a random set rectangle from this point to this point. Very easy, you don't need to care so much. Just make a random shape. So we're going to use that as a reference to see how we're moving, how we're orbiting around the screen. So let's start with a simple one, that is by using your zoom in and zoom out cursor in your mouse. So this little tool, so you can go inside and out. Of course, this is something cool to know, that if I'm pointing here with my cursor, I'm going to zoom in and zoom out to this little corner over here. Whereas if I'm here, if my cursor is pointing right there, I'm going to zoom in there. So it's actually kind of pointing to the direction of the zooming in and zooming out. Another element pretty important is actually the right click. So let me right click and move around. You can see that my cursor now has changed into this orbit symbol. So right now I'm just orbiting around and I'm moving around this element. There is, of course, the option if you press at the right button, the same one that does the orbit, and at the same time press at the control, then it's actually, the cursor is changing again and becomes a zoom in and zoom out. Another one is the pan, because sometimes you don't want to orbit, you don't want to zoom in or zoom out, you just want to look just a little bit more to the right. So you press the shift button and the right click. So again, the cursor is changing to this little hand. So now you're shifting around. So we have the zoom in, zoom out, pretty simple. You can also do it by right click and control. Then you have the orbit, that is just the right click, perfect. And then you have the pan, that is right click and shift. So let's select this item, let's select it. Super simple, we select on the object. You see this gumball that we talked just a second ago. If I click this out, then I don't see the gumball anymore. But it's really helpful. Let's bring it back on right over here. Let's bring it back on. So when you select an item, it's gonna have these yellow highlighted edges, or the points are showing up. So you're gonna be seeing all this. Let's not dive so much into that, but I will create quickly some more elements that we can check how you can select in a smart way. How can you highlight in a smart way your items? So I go in, and then from this gumball, I am gonna be moving. You can move, as I already noted, you can move some elements here in different axes. Let's say I wanna move for 300 millimeters. Okay, I just moved over here. Whenever you're doing that, whenever you're using the gumball, you have a smart choice, that is clicking on the Alt button. So now that I clicked on it, you can see that the small plus sign is appearing right above my cursor. This means that it's creating a copy. So I can go ahead and create more copies just simply by moving the item around and pressing the Alt button. You can only press it once and it works. You can press it once again, the Alt button, and then actually it's just gonna move it. But we press it, we create more and more. Let's do one more here. Looks like a Christmas tree a bit. Okay, so now that I have all these items, I wanna zoom in closer to them. Maybe pan by shift and right click to come closer to them. Okay, let's say I wanna select just these two elements. There are different options on how to do that, and maybe you are familiar on options like that from other design programs. So we're gonna just create some selection windows. Okay, important to know here is that when you do the selection window, you see over here, if I just click and drag, it creates this blue window over here. If I do it from the left side going to the right, let's do that. Left side going right, and release. This is going to select only the items that they are completely within this selection window. Only these are the items that they are selected and highlighted. So again, if I do here, only these two items were completely included within the selection window, therefore are the only selected items. But if you do from the right side to the left side, then anything that has been touched even slightly from the selection window will be included. So let's say I want to create these two elements. I just go here, barely touch them with my selection window, done. And then again, I go with my gumball, I select that, I drag it, press Alt, create a copy of just these two elements. So this is a simple way to go around and move around your project, look on the different sides, but also select the different elements that they are important to you by using, in a smart way, this selection window. I selected all the old rectangles, deleted. So let's start with something very simple, that it's a rectangle. So I can see that over here, I click on it. One of the first things that you're gonna see over here is that the command that it has been used right now is the rectangle. So I could also not just click on this rectangle, but rather type rectangle in this command bar. Anyway, so we have the rectangle. We can start by drawing it from this point, let's say to this point. Very nice. It's a rectangle. Let's go and use the command line this time. So let's do rectangle. You can see that already when I start typing it, it's actually sorting through the functions to select the one that I might want. So rectangle, enter. There are different options. Of course, you can do from side to side as I just did, so from one corner to the other one, but also there are other options. Let's click once again. You can do a 3-point vertical. So vertical, you can start with the center, blah, blah, blah. There are always, or most of the time, there are options. So you can do a simple thing. The standard format is going to be what is pre-selected. Otherwise, you can go over here and change. So for example, let's say that I want to do a rectangle that I start from the center of the rectangle. I can either click here, you see that it's highlighted, or just type C, because it's the little underlined letter over here. Click enter, and then we start with the center of the rectangle. So I start right over here, and then I drag to the other corner. So let's say that I want to do a specific rectangle that is starting from the point 0 of the drawing. So honestly, ground zero of the drawing, let's start there. So I can say that I want my first point to be at 0. Type in 0, enter, I'm starting right over here. And I want that actually is in total 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. I type in the length, 100, and then I'm here, it has locked in the 100 option, and then I do another 100 for the other length. So now right here I have one rectangle that is 100 by 100. Let me delete the rest by selecting, deleting. I have this rectangle over here, 100 by 100. So quite simple, I think, just how to make a rectangle. Same goes if I want to do, there's also, of course, the option to do just the point. I locate it over here. Or let's say I want to do a line, start typing line. And hit enter, start of the line. And then you can see right over here, it asks for the end of the line, right here. One thing that you might be noticing, either when I have this selected, or you can see right here at the point, is these little white dots. So these are actually the control points of each element. So for example, this is a line. There are 2 points that they're defining this line, the start and the end. And then there is this rectangle. If I select it, I can see 4 points. That is actually the 4 points that they are creating this rectangle over here. Let's move on. Let's do a random polyline. So I hit there, or I can start typing polyline. Tack, 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 tack. You can see all these white points over here. I can create a random polyline. Let's say I want to stop here. I hit enter. It's done, drawn. Beautiful. So we have this over here. If I select it, I can see all these points that they're creating it. What is actually pretty cool is that I can select one of these points and actually move it around. Let's say I want to move it this way, moved. This way, moved. I can select more of on one point. I can select these two, for example, and move it around here. So this is really cool because you can actually change the size of elements by moving their points. So let's say I want to make this rectangle bigger. I can just select these 2 points and drag it with a gumball. So I can also, if I don't want a rectangle anymore, I can select it. And I want to make it a trapeze or another form. I can just change this element here. Let's go and test some more options. So we have the rectangle, we started, of course we ruined it already. The point, the line, the polyline. Let's do a free line. It's a free formed curve. So with the free curve, it's actually, you're not drawing the line, but you're drawing, or you're defining the points that they control this curved line. So you start from a point. So if I click here, this is not the point of the line really, but it's actually just a dynamic point into me shaping a free-formed line. I go on, and then I press enter, done. There are, of course, subcategories to that of a curve that has the points on it. You can play around and create different things. Of course, there is the circle. Let's take it. There's this option of making a circle by the center of it, or let's go again. Let's try to do again. There are different options. For example, 2-point circle, 3-point defined circle. I do that by clicking here. And then let's say I want to do a circle that is somewhere inside here. I click this point, and then this point, and then I have a circle that is defined by these lines. So if you're familiar with other design programs, I think that these are all pretty standard functions, and you can discover more along the way here. So one thing that I would like for us to discuss a little bit further here is not only the snaps, because of course while you're drawing you can be using the snaps, these smart magnet tools. So let's start maybe with this. Type line, perfect. Start point of the line, and let's say I want to stop in the middle. I want my line to be finishing exactly at the middle of the shape. Then I can actually use that, because you saw that it was highlighted middle. Because I have on my snaps, I have selected that I want that I can be magnetic attached to the middle of any line or any object. The same goes with the end, the near, the center. So for example, if I want to go and draw a line that it starts from the center of this element, again, I type line. And if I go very close to my circle, it actually magnetically takes me to the center. So I click here and I'm at the center. Perfect. So I can do a line that it starts exactly from the center of this rectangle. We've done a lot of lines, but let's do another one. And this time, don't type line. It was the last command that we actually did. We can see it right here. The last command, it was actually the line. I can scroll here. It was the line. So Rhino remembers what it was your last command. It has it over here. So if you press the space bar, let's say now I press the space bar, I do again the last command that I did, so line. So this is really helpful when you want to repeat the last command that you did. Let's try it again. Spacebar, again line. Spacebar, again line. From point to point. And this is it. So these are some basic curves that we just explored. Let me make a rectangle to connect all of them into. Perfect. So in here we have all of our curves. These are the basic curves, and also how you move around the program a little bit. Let me move this. And as well, the control points. All of these elements are defined by control points. Let me select the elements, you see? They're all defined by control points. Sometimes, for example, if I select this one, I see it directly. But sometimes not. Sometimes they're just highlighted yellow curves. But I really want to see the points. There is always an option, follow me. It's right over here. So show object control points. I click that, and now I can see all the different control points. This can be used for different reasons. If you want to reshape something, as we did with the rectangle and we ruined it right here, you can select again these control points because we have them visible. Perfectly changed. Or let's say this curve, I want this curve over here to be a little bit more dramatic. So let me select this point that is defining it and moving it. Or this one, let us move this over here. Or I don't want this to be a circle anymore. I will select this one point and completely distort it. In all this, of course, you have the Control Z to go back, or Control Y to redo. Control Z, undo, Control Y, redo. So having your basic lines over here, let's try to do some of the basic functions. Because it's sometimes annoying to see all these control points, although super useful, I don't want to see them anymore, so let's press escape. Let's do some of the basic functions that we have for the curves. So let's say I create a rectangle, I start typing, I have it right here. Some of the basic tools or commands, let's say, is the explode. So at the moment this is 4 connected lines. Let's say I don't want them to be connected anymore. Explode. So right now, although they're still selected, these are single lines. Let's say I don't want this line anymore. I select it and delete it. These are 3 separate lines. You can also see that here, that right now it's 3 curves added to the selection. I can join them, so it's not 3 curves, but it's just 1 curve. You can always connect them by the command join. 3 curves joined into 1 open curve. You can see that here, because of course it's not closed anymore. So this exists here, explode and join. Explode into 3 curves, or we select these 2 and then we join them. So then these 2 curves became 1. On Rhino you can find all the tools that you find in AutoCAD, in Vectorworks, anything. So for example, let's say I wanna make this edge over here a little bit softer. I can type in fillet, and it says select the first curve to fillet, and then I will select the second one, and boom, it's gonna be fillet. But the thing is that I wanna have a specific radius. This one is a random radius, maybe from a different command. Let's select it, and I want to change it and make it into 30 millimeters. Press enter. So let me go right here, select my first curve right here. Now it asks me to select the second one. I do select it, and perfect, we have a fillet of 30. I press space in order to repeat the last command. Select the first curve, select the second curve, and boom, we have another fillet edge right over here. So we can explode, we can trim, the basic function that you have everywhere. So for example, if let's say I create a line and these ones are actually, I want to delete this part over here of this line, I put in the command trim, I select the objects that I want to trim, and boom, trimmed. And then I have this line and this one. I select them both, press join, and now they're connected into one element. All this, right now, we're working on perspective, but all this we're actually doing in plan. We're not using the third dimension. But of course you can use the third dimension over here. So let's say I want to make a line that starts from right over here and it's going vertically. I will press line, and then I want to go vertically. It might be most of the times that this gets a little bit complicated. So what I would suggest to do is to shuffle through the viewports. The next viewport that I see is the top one. It's not really useful because it helps me only in the X and Y axis. Not super useful. Let me shuffle once again. And now I see from the front. So actually now I can move vertically. And now created my vertical line. Shuffle again for us to go to the perspective side. And got it. Let's say I want to create another line right over here, starting from here and going up, because it just doesn't snap correctly. So just shuffle through the viewports, go to one that is showing it from the side, and let's go up. Let's say that I want something that is going straight up vertically, exactly as I did here. Let's re-see that. I press the shift. And now it's actually locking the ortho option of the program. So now it's either going here or it's either going vertically or horizontally. So you can see that while I press, at the moment I'm pressing shift, right now this one, the ortho right here is highlighted. So let's say I want to do a line leading up here, done. Let's shuffle and go back to our curves. I've done 2 random curves over here, but right now these curves are neither connected, they are neither the same. Let's maybe try to connect them. So again, do line, control, select from this point, from this end point to this end point, and now we have 1, 2, 3 lines that they are completely connected right over here. I can select all these, press joint, or just go here and click, but I always find it easier to type things in. So I join them and they are a 3D line. Let me also add this to the selection, to my open curve. Add it. Very nice. So I want to see the points of this. So either I deselect and select again, and now I'm seeing the points. But you know what? It's really bothering me that these 2 points over here, they're not the same. They're not the same height. I have some different options in order to scale either this or this line to make them the same. So let's check them out. So the first option is actually to select these points, and it's going to be set PT, set points. And it brings me this dialog. So what set PT does is that it sets the points into a specific point, either in the x-axis, in the y-axis, or the z. So let's say what I really care about right now is the height, then I care about the z-axis. So I can unclick the x and the y. I only care for things to align in the z-axis. Press OK, and now you can see that these 2 selected points, they're going to be completely aligned wherever I tell them to. Let's say I want them to be exactly here, where it used to be, the one of them. So perfect, they're right here. The set points function, it can help further. For example, let's say that I want all these elements to be all aligned in the x-axis over here. Let me do again, set PT, or press the space bar, because it was the last element that we had used. And then I want to just select the X. Let me right click. Right click, it means just this one, please. Okay, and then it's now taking these points of mine and then aligning them in the X. So now it's a flattened element. This is going to be really useful because this set points, it's actually working with curves, it's working with surfaces, it's working with polysurfaces. So this is actually going to be very useful moving forward too. So keep it in mind. And then another element, another function, another command that, of course, we lightly touched with a gumball is the scale. So let's say I select this one, I see my beautiful colorful gumball over here. I can scale elements either to this dimension, but then there is another choice that you can also go and just simply type scale. There are 3 ways to scale. For example, maybe you see that already here, I can only scale into 1 dimension. So this is only scaling here. I can scale into 2 dimensions. That is by holding this one and then clicking shift at the same time. So now I have this into 2 dimensions. Just because my element is 2-dimensional, if I had a cube right now doing this, it would scale it from all sides. But you have always the option to scale. So let's say that I want this line of mine to actually start from here, but not end there, but rather end right at this line, then I can scale. I just want 1 dimension scale, and I will use as reference point this one, and then I just drag it and drag it until, until it hits right over here. So now I can just scale. So these are different ways to shape, move, and form your different elements. Now that you know all this, I think we're pretty good with the curves. It's going to be a great moment to actually move to the surfaces. So let me create a new rectangle over here by just copying this. And this is going to be the area where we're discovering more of the surfaces. Now that we have created all these curves on the side, let's jump into the next super important element, that is surfaces. So you can either go straight up and draw a surface, let's say this one, surface from 3 to 4 corner points. So I select this tool, I start drawing with 3 or 4 elements. Spacebar, I do that again. I can create exactly like that. There are different options here, as for example, if you want to do a rectangular surface, it's going to be called a plane. I select this command, and then I have exactly here, I have a plane. You can see that actually a surface is defined by these lines that they're running through it. So these are called isocurves. I select my surface, it's right over here, and I go into my panels in the display, the one that we opened right here. So this is the surface isocurves. You can change to opt in or opt out from seeing them, but I always find very useful that you can actually see them. It makes the selection very easy. So I'm seeing the surfaces right here, and right now, actually, my viewport is not, it's super helpful when I want to check curves and work with curves, but actually in the surfaces, it's not so easy because the colors are all the same, and other than these isocurves, I have nothing to help me select or define them. So there are some different options. I will take you back to the viewports. So let's double click. Let's go to all the different viewports. I can see them over here, right over here. So there are different ways that you can actually view your viewport. And this you can select by right over here. These options exist in each one of them. So in the top. Okay, so let's say when I look at it at plan, I want to be seeing it exactly like this, but when I see the perspective and when I see it in 3D, I would like to have a little bit of a better understanding in a 3D mode. So I will go right here, have the drop-down menu, and go right here. These are different display ways. So right now we're in the wireframe, that is just showing the basics. Let me go to the shaded. So in the shaded, you will see that my 3D elements or my surfaces and solid elements, they're actually shaded. You can toggle, you can play around and see what the different options do. Rendered usually show us what is the material, but right now, of course, I have no materials. So I'm just seeing white and the background color. Again, in the display right over here, you can go and change if you want the background color, for example, to be, maybe you want it to be red. Okay, so now you have it red. But I don't think you want it to be red, so let's go back to the light gray. Perfect. And then not only I see a background, but also I see where my surfaces are and and their isocurves. Very good. So there is let's zoom back inside. So there is, of course, the option to create the surfaces like that, or to create simple planes, rectangular planes. But there is also the option to create a surface by curves. So let's go back to creating a random polyline. I make a freeform random polyline, and I would really like to have a surface, a solid surface that is actually defined by these lines. So I select my lines, I have one closed curve added to my selection, and then you go ahead and type planar surface. So it's exactly this one, planar surface, press enter, and now you can see that actually my curve, this curve that I have right over here, has helped me to create a surface. Very, very nice tool that you can see right here. If you're close to a point that it's more than one elements there, so for example here I have not only my original curve, but I have the surface that I created. So you have a selection menu that it can help you toggle between what you actually want to select. Let's say I want to select my original curve, the one that I created the surface from. I select it right now. I don't need it anymore, so I press delete, and right now I only have my surface that it was created freeform. That's why also we put quite some time into understanding the curves, because now you know all the options from where you can define your points and from them create the surface that you actually need. So there is the planar surface again. Let's try to do a free-formed one. Very nice. Planar surface, and it creates a perfect one. It keeps in the selection, it actually keeps my curve. So if I don't need it anymore, I can delete it. Otherwise, I can just move it around, copy it, or scale it and create a different planar surface. Okay, so then these are some of the options. Of course, here it goes that you can trim, you can split, you can do a lot of things with these surfaces. Okay, let's say that I have this surface right over here, and I want to kind of take away this part here at the edge. I create a line, and then you can just simply trim. I select these two options, these two shapes, press trim, and now I have trimmed this surface right over here. There is another option that it's right over here, and it's split. Of course, you can do the normal split with different elements, but I want to do the split by isocurve. So this is where the isocurves, they come handy. So this is the surface that I want to split, and then you can see now that according to the isocurves, there is a line created right over here that I can split with. So let's say I do it right here, press enter, and now you can see that I have this one. It's now split into two different parts. Go again here, right click, split by isocurve, select objects to split. This one, I can go on and split further, or I can press toggle. You can see right over here, either click or type T, and then it toggles to the other isocurve, so the vertical one. So click and enter 2 lines. Created. So now I actually have exploded, or better like split this surface into different parts, but I would really like to connect them again because maybe I don't want them separated anymore. So of course you can always go with the option of join. As you can do join, and now this is one surface. As you can go with the explode and the trim in the explode and the join in the curves, you can also do exactly the same thing with the surfaces. You can explode them again, and then once again we have these 3 surfaces. Let me join them once again. I type in join, but then it would be really nice actually if they are not, if it gets a little bit simplified. So I can select again this surface that is now part of many different surfaces. That's why it's called poly surface. And I press merge all coplanar faces I don't know if it's the first one that comes to you, but this is exactly what I want. I want to merge the different faces. Press enter, and now all these different faces have been joined into one element. All this was pretty easy to do because we're actually using only one of the dimensions. So let's say in the rectangle that we did over here, it's of course completely flat. Let's check on the other viewboards. On the top I see it perfectly, but then you can see right over here, everything is flat other than the curve that we created before. Let's say that I want to create something that is a little bit more freeform. I create this line over here, this freeform line. I select some of these points and now move them vertically. So right now you don't have a flat curve anymore to planar surface and then have a nice surface that is a little bit curved, but there is still an option. You select the element, you select the curve, and you press patch. A window will pop up that is called patch surface options. Let's keep it quite easy. I'm not going to change anything, but you can toggle, you can shift around the different functions here, press OK, and now you can see that a surface has been created based on my curve. So this is the way to go from curves to surfaces, but sometimes you want to go from a surface back to a curve. So for example, let's say that I need to have again the outline that created me this complicated surface over here. So there is a way, and it's to create the outlines. I select the element that I would like to, I go right over here. So in this tool over here, but then I click on the side. And there's going to be a duplicate border command. Click on that, and now you can see that we have a yellow highlighted outline. So now we have back the outline curve of this shape. So let's say I move it right over here. It's really nice because you can go from curves to surfaces and back to curves. So I have this, I press planar surface, and I get the surface once again. Or I can do the outline again. I can go right here and do outline again by duplicate border. Done. Okay, perfect. The last category that we will explore right now is actually the solids. So how to make 3D elements into our Rhino. So let's dive in. We select one of these borders that we have created right here, create a copy by pressing Alt. We have it right here. And let's start by creating a solid. There are several ways to create one, but let's discover first the standard options. That it's right over here. You see the box over here. You can, of course, left click on the box, define your points, and right here we have our first box. Perfect. You can, from here, if you don't go and right click on the and left click on the box, you can go right here in this little corner and you can see all the different shapes that you can create. You can create a cylinder, you can create a sphere. There are many options. So let's go and make a sphere as well. We select the center and then we go and make our sphere. You can see actually, because we have selected to see everything in the rendered version, also the shadows change, especially with our solids. You can see a little bit the shadows behind here. So here we have our solids. This is a nice opportunity actually to give you some info regarding the way that actually Rhino is creating these shapes. So there are two ways to create shapes. For example, a sphere, it's going to be the easiest item to see that with. It's either by having a geometry. So sphere is just a geometry. You give the radius or you give the diameter and then you have your geometrical sphere. So this is exactly what Rhino does. Other 3D programs, let's say SketchUp, or 3ds Max, they're not using geometrical entities to create their 3D objects, but it's rather by creating small little rectangles, small little surfaces. So the thing is that you know always that with Rhino, it doesn't matter how much you zoom in, this is going to be a perfect sphere because it's just the geometry of it. It's not consisting of 1,000 tiny little surfaces. So, okay, I stop with this pause. So let's go back to our solids. We created a box, we created a sphere. You can always scale it. Here we can see a little bit the scale in a different way. So for example, let's go to our box. I can scale it on this dimension, on this direction, right here. Or I can scale it on this. Or always, if I press the shift at the same time, it does a complete scale of the element in all dimensions. So this is a little bit to have in mind what is scaling in different dimensions. You can always do that by pressing scale in 1 dimension, in 2, or the normal scale that it will just make the whole element proportionately bigger or smaller. There is another way to create our solids, and this is by actually using our surfaces. So let's say I go back here, I select one of our previous surfaces that I liked. So let's say this one, I create a copy right over here by clicking Alt. So there is a way to do that, to create from this one a perfect solid, that it's actually by extruding this surface. And this is, you click Extrude Surface. You go and you click Extrude, and you can set the height. Let's say I want it 350 millimeters, and now you have, from a surface, you now just created a solid. The command, once again, is called Extrude Surface. So let's say I take this one, this surface right over here, I do again Extrude Surface and extrude up. I want a little bit lower to 100, and now I have a second surface, a second solid that it's actually defined perfectly by my elements. So the same thing I can do by going back to our curves. So I select one of these curves, make a copy by pressing Alt, I bring it right over here, and I will go again and do extrude, not surface this time, but I do extrude curve. So I can of course do the same thing, set the height, but it's something important to check also here, that there are different options right here. So in the output, in the direction, because let's say I don't want to do it vertically, but I want to do it in another direction, you can set that over here. Maybe I want to do both sides. So you see that right now it's not just extruding on one side, but it's mirroring the effect on the other side. Then there's the option to create a solid or not. So let's say right now, let me unclick this. Let's say that I stop right now. This is my curve has not become a solid, it's an open element. So let's say I would actually, let's control set. Let's go back, extrude curve. I would like to actually create a solid this time. I would like it to be completely solid. So now you see it has created a perfect solid. Let's move this curve again right over here. There is another option, extrude curve. The solid is clicked, but then there is the delete input. The same thing. These are usually also, you can find them also in the surface extrusion. So delete input is once I have created the solid that I wanted to, what do I want to happen with the curve that created it? So if I want to keep the curve, then I don't delete the input, but I don't care about the curve anymore. So let's say delete the input. Let's do 200, and now there is no curve left. I just have my nice solid. So these are the main ways to create a solid, and these are the ones that you're gonna mostly use. But then there are different things that we can do with the solids. So let's say that we want to make this one much bigger. Take this one right in the center of it. Oh, the input curve was still active here, so let's take it and delete it. And let's say I want to connect these two. So 1 and 2, I wanted to connect them into one solid instead of two. This is called Boolean union. So this is right over here, and with the left click, it does the Boolean union, and this is now one item. So these are completely connected, as you can see right over here. The thing is that this side, this surface right over here, and this surface right over here, they're actually on the same plane. This should be one, but because they originate from two different shapes, they're actually not connected at the moment. You can always check that when this happens because of the isocurves. So this is something that the isocurves are telling you. Here they are not matching, but also you can select it. How you can select just this surface, go here, orbit to be just under the shape, and then press at the same time Shift and Control. Press them at the same time, and then simple click on the surface. And now you can see we just, from this whole shape, the only thing we selected right now is just the surface. As we did with the control points, the same way you can go and scale just this surface. Of course, it creates a lot of problems. Control Z, select it again by Control and Shift. We can move it around, we can move it up, we can move it down. And the same thing we can do by selecting each of the surface that we want to use, just this one surface. You can also take this one surface and just, with the gumball, start dragging it and press Alt. So now you have a copy of just this one surface. So, or for example, you want this surface to be at the same height of, let's say, the cube. We select this surface by just clicking Control and Shift. We select just this one, set PT, set points. Set points also works with surfaces and polysurfaces, as I said before, and then we only want to set on the Z. So I right click just on the Z, okay, and then I snap into one of the points of this cube, snap here, and now perfect. So this height now is exactly the same as this height. Let me go around in the ports and see exactly that here I have moved this to be exactly in this one by setting points. Do I want to set it at this height? Again, set PT, at set, and then it's now exactly the same height. This is super useful. We checked, of course, now how is to connect the different shapes to one another, but then there are different options right here that you will discover if you click right over here. So you can do the union. So the shortcut for this one is also BU. Very easy, Boolean union. But also you can do the difference, BD. So either you can click right over here, or you can use the shortcut, or start writing it actually, Boolean union or Boolean difference, or simply BD. So from there you can select one solid, and then from this solid you're gonna subtract something from. Actually at the moment I have nothing colliding, but let's make this. Let's move this more into there. Let me orbit a little bit around so I see better. Let's say that theoretically I want to, from this solid over here, this solid, what we call solid, is actually a polysurface because it's created for many surfaces. It's a closed polysurface. You can see that right over here, a simple solid. I want to subtract this part, to take it out. So BD, or Boolean difference, enter, select surfaces or poly surfaces to subtract with. I select this one, press enter, and then you can see right over here, because of the edges, or let's say we take this one, we move it away, it has been carved out. Super helpful to do that. Make sure that just whenever you do a command, let's say I'm taking this one and I want to make it 3D again, and I want to make it into a solid, I copy it right here. When I do extrude surface, just make always sure that you check what are the different options that the program is giving you for each command. This is usually very useful, and many of the things that you want, they're going to be already included into that. The same way as we have selected the edges before and we have completely distorted this element right here, just I want to let you know that you can do that in just simple edges. So you can go closer, select this edge right over here. Because it's very close, of course, to the surface next to it, it gives you the selection menu to make your life a little bit easier. So it highlights either one or the other. Let's say I want this edge right over here. I can either move it and distort this whole object, or I can just take it and just copy it a step away. And from there, I can again extrude curve and then extrude either vertically, or as you can see here, there's the option for direction. And then I do base point for direction. So let's say I want them horizontally. So I will use this one as a reference, something that I know that is on the direction I want. And now I have the extruded surfaces exactly like that. Let me scale that or bring this in. Perfect. So of course in this you can trim. If things are touching each other, you can split. You can do different things. I will let you test this out by yourself. And then that's it. This is the main categories, and this is the main functions that you're going to use to build mostly everything. Last thing that I would like to do is maybe create a dot, just kind of something to display the different elements that we have checked around here. So first we have done the curves. Right over here we have our curves. I'm creating another dot. This is useful when you want to create small labels within your drawing. Then we actually dived into the surfaces, and okay, and then we work with the solids.